Good morning, everybody. It's Monday at 10 o'clock. We've pushed our two week 5 lectures forward a little bit. We did lecture 5.1 on Friday, and then we're doing lecture 5.2 today. I'm doing these so that people have time to watch the lectures and get up to speed with what we need to do before we do our final week assessments and then our exam on Saturday. So today I'm going to do a couple of things with you. I didn't finish everything I wanted to do with externalities in lecture 5.1. I explained the general concepts, but I want to do just a practice example with you and use some equations and some diagrams to illustrate how government policy may impact on the market when they're trying to address negative externalities. So I'm going to do that shortly with you. The other things I'm going to do today, or the other thing I'm going to do today, is to do lecture 10. That is a relatively short lecture. So if we put the end of chapter 9 and chapter 10 together, that should occupy most of our time. If we get a little bit more time, I will just do a few little revision things with you, but we'll just see how we're going for time. So I'm going to go to the presentation now. The first thing I'm going to do is just to take you through the exam and just make sure that we've got everything clear there. There is the announcement on our forum, but I just want to take you through that as well in the lecture, and then we'll get into our second part of lecture 9.1 and then move on to lecture 10. So I'll just transition over to our presentation. So you have your exam and on Saturday, but before we get to that point, let's just read through what we've done in our presentation. So let's just see what we've done in our announcement, should I say. So you've got our various deadlines here to earn marks from multiple choice questions. Right, that's today and Wednesday. And then the deadline to earn marks from SAQ questions is Wednesday. Deadline to earn marks from the Playconomics game is on Thursday. And deadline to earn further marks from SAQ is on Friday. So you've got those dates for you, and they were published in our original calendar on Moodle at the start of the term. Our exam date is on Saturday, and you can begin the exam any time you want in that 4-hour interval. Once you open up the exam, you have 2 hours and 15 minutes to get the exam done. So there's a little bit of flexibility about when you do the exam. Just make sure that you have a good connection organised before you actually start the exam. So the exam should take you no more than 2 hours to complete. There is another 15 minutes in there that we add for administrative time and to work out any internet connection issues. All right, so the exam location, it's online. So the exam location is online, and of course, it's also an open book exam. There are 55 multiple choice questions, and there may be bonus questions depending on whether you have done the My Experience survey. So if you want to up your chances of getting a higher mark in the exam, make sure that you fill in the My Experience survey. The exam coverage, the exam will cover the entire course. So everything that you've been asked in the course from chapters 1 to chapter 2 is chapter 10 is examinable in the course. The exam will be open book. It's an individual effort. Students are not allowed to communicate, cooperate, collaborate with anyone else while doing the exam. And we do have some safeguards in place to detect when this is going on. And then there's instructions at the bottom about if you experience technical issues during the exam. So make sure you read all the exam notes carefully and also fill in the My Experience survey. At the moment, about 35%, I think, of students have filled in that survey. You've still got a number of days to go, and you can earn bonus questions in the exam if you complete that form. So there is an incentive in there for students to complete the My Experience survey. So read the. I've just highlighted the most important points in the announcement, but make sure you go through the announcement and read it very slowly yourself. So as I said today, we're going to finish off chapter 9 with some calculations. So I'm going to go into question 9. I'm going to start with where we finished the other day, really because we could view this as a revision exercise. The first little point that I'm going to do, we could view that as a revision exercise. The second calculation exercise is new, and I didn't get to that last week. So when we were thinking about our externalities, there's a number of ways to deal with externalities, as we said last week, and the way that we attempt to deal with these is when we have small groups of people who can negotiate with one another, then we think about the Coase theorem. And I'm going to do this very quickly because we did do it on Friday. But essentially, the main points to note when we're doing the Coase theorem is that if the School of Rock is negotiating with the School of Maths, there's a couple of things that we see first. There's an $8,000 difference between the two possible outcomes for the School of Rock, whereas with the School of Maths, there's a $12,000 difference between being quiet and being noisy. So the thing we note about this is the School of Maths does have more incentive to negotiate. They have more incentive to negotiate, and they can offer a greater. I've made a mistake there. Forgive me. They can. There's a $14,000 difference for them. There's an $8,000 difference for the School of Rock. So the School of Maths has a much greater incentive to negotiate an outcome than the School of Rock. And they can make a bigger offer as well. So they have more incentive, and they can make a bigger offer to the other side to try and arrive at a solution. And next, if the School of Rock makes noise, total tuition will be $10,000. If if the School of Rock makes noise, the total tuition, when we talk about the total tuition, we would be thinking about the total tuition between the School of Maths and the School of Rock. So we're looking here and we're saying, how much is noise worth to this community of two schools? And the answer is noise is worth $10,000. But what is quiet worth to these two schools? What is quiet worth? Quiet is worth $16,000. So quiet has a much greater social benefit. It has a much greater social benefit than noise. And before we even know what the property rights are, we already know really what the solution will be. Ultimately, whoever has the property rights is not really going to affect the outcome. The outcome will be quiet because that has a greater socially efficient outcome. And so then we know that they're sharing the building. We know that they're going to negotiate. If the School of Maths has the right to be quiet, then in order for them to sell that right, the School of Rock would have to offer them more than $14,000. And we've just seen that the School of Rock does not have $14,000 to negotiate with. It only has $8,000 to negotiate with. So the School of Maths will decline any offer it gets from the School of Rock because the School of Rock simply doesn't have enough money to buy them off. So if the School of Maths has the right to be quiet, then everything will stay quiet. On the other hand, if the School of Rock has the right to make noise, the School of Maths could potentially offer up to $14,000 to the School of Rock. They don't need to offer $14,000. There's an $8,000 difference between noise and quiet for the School of Rock. And so all that the School of Maths needs to do is offer this $8,000 and anything else, right? $8,001, for example. The other day I gave an example and I made the example $9,000. But really, as long as the School of Maths offers more than $8,000, the School of Rock will sell their right and there will not be noise because the School of Rock will agree to make no noise. So that's how the Coase theorem will play out in this scenario. And the Coase theorem is basically about two parties arriving at an efficient solution through negotiation. However, in big scenarios where there are many people involved, for example, in the case of pollution or smoking, and there is a negative externality, there are too many people to negotiate. So how might governments deal with this externality to make sure that the market is going to arrive at an efficient solution? Tax is one way. It's not the only way, but it's one way of getting to the efficient solution. So I'm going to take you through an example and show how tax might work to get the economy to arrive at the optimum outcome and the optimum price. So we're going to start with our original diagram. We've got a diagram and we've got an equation for demand and an equation for supply. And we can see that the demand curve starts at 40 and then 40 minus 2q. So the axis on the horizontal line will be, the intercept there will be 200. So, and then if we have an equation for demand and we have an equation for supply, we simply put the demand equal to the supply. There's demand, there's supply, and we arrive at our equilibrium income, which will be Q equals 100. And then once we've got Q equal to 100, we substitute that 100 over into the demand and supply. We substitute it in the equation for Q, and we find that the price in demand is 20 and the price in supply is 20. So that would indicate that we've done our calculation correctly. The equilibrium price is 20 and the equilibrium quantity is 100. Whoops. The equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity is, sorry, I've gone, forgive me here. So once we've done our original equilibrium, I've skipped forward a slide. Forgive me here. So then I need to proceed to my next slide. Once we've got our equilibrium, let's work out our consumer and producer surplus. So in order to work out our producer and consumer surplus, we know that the consumer surplus, I'm going to draw that in, I'm going to trace that over in green, and we think about, well, what is the height of our rectangle? The height of our rectangle is the difference between 20 and 40, so this becomes 20, and then the horizontal part of our triangle is 100, so half of 100 times 20, so this is 50 times 20, and so we've got a consumer surplus of 1,000, and the producer surplus will be the same. We then come down to the next line, and we've already done our equilibrium price, we've done our equilibrium quantity, and we're now assuming that there is a negative externality. So what the government calculates is that every time this product is made, it creates a $2 negative externality on the society. Now, this may be because the industry is producing noise. Maybe it's because the industry is producing pollution. But one way or another, the government calculates that each unit of the product creates an externality of 2 units. So all the government does then is it adds $2 to the supply of every good. In other words, it imposes a tax which shifts the supply curve upwards, and that shift of the supply curve upwards is equal to the tax, and that is equal to $2. So the curve shifts up by $2, and then we have to then substitute that $2 back into the supply equation and work out our new equilibrium. So that, remember, in the previous, the original calculation that we did, the price in supply was equal to 0.2 of Q, but now it's equal to 0.2 of Q plus 2. In other words, we've added 2 to the price of supply, because this tax is going to be imposed on the supplier. It's imposed on the supplier. And so when we substitute these values in, we've got our equation for demand, which hasn't changed, and our equation for supply, which has changed, and we simply move our 2Q over here and change the sign. So now we've got, sorry about that, we move our 2Q over here. We've got now 4Q. We move our number 2 to the other side. We've now got 38. So 38 is equal to 0.4 of Q. So now our quantity is 95. Our quantity is 95. And then we substitute our 95 back into our equation for demand. We substitute it into Q. Q becomes 95. And in the end, we arrive at a price in demand, which will be 21, and a price in supply, which is, again, we substitute our value of 95 back into Q, and we've got a price in demand and a price in supply, both equal to 21, which indicates to us that we've done our calculation correctly. We've correctly calculated. So then we move forward to our next line, and we slide up a little bit. We've done our new calculation, and then what we have to be aware of is this: that when the seller sells this new product for $21, they don't get to keep $21 because they have to take $2 away and give that to the government. So the firm actually gets to keep $19. They don't get to keep $21, they get to keep $19 because they've paid their tax to government. We then move forward to the next slide, and we see then if we can now calculate the government revenue. The government revenue is $2 times 95. Our government revenue is $2 times 95. And so the government is now earning $190. And we can show that on our next diagram. There's our government revenue, $190. That goes to government. So the government has taken, let's be clear what the government has done here. The government has taken some surplus from the consumer surplus. Remember the original consumer surplus. The original consumer surplus was shown by this red rectangle, but now the government has taken this part from the consumer, the bit that I've just shaded. So, and they've also taken something from the producer surplus, the original producer surplus. And so in the end, that adds up to $190. So that's the government surplus. So the government's happy here. The government's happy. But the question is everyone else happy? So we move down to our next slide. And let's work out our new consumer and producer surplus. Our new producer surplus is the difference between 21 and 40. So that's the number 19. And times 95, That's the new level of output, 95. So the new consumer surplus is 902.5. Now remember, what was it before? Before the government intervened, the consumer surplus was 1,000, but now it's 902.5. So consumers have lost 97.5 of consumer surplus. The same for producer surplus. The producer surplus is the area at the bottom. What's this vertical amount? 19, 0, up to 19, times 95. So that's the producer surplus. So if we add the government surplus of 190 and the consumer surplus and the producer surplus all together, we're going to get 995 of surplus. Well, what was the surplus before the government intervened? Before the government intervened, you'll remember that the total surplus was 2,000. The total surplus was 2,000. Now the consumer surplus is now 902.5. The producer surplus is 902.5. And the government surplus in the middle there, I'll do that in red, the government surplus was 170. And so our total surplus has fallen by 5. Our total surplus has fallen by 5. Now, I've taken a little while to get here because we have to ask, where is the other 5? And the other 5, of course, is in the triangle, the blue triangle, that's shown by the fall in output from 100 to 95. Those goods are no longer being produced, which means that there is no longer a producer surplus for those goods. There's no longer a consumer surplus. There's no longer a producer surplus. And so the area of that triangle has disappeared. And of course, that is 5. And now if you add that 5 to 195, we have 2,000. So the government intervention, we would normally say, is a dead weight loss. Under normal circumstances, we would call that government intervention a dead weight loss. So I'm finishing off chapter 9 here, but I want to discuss this issue of the small triangle that I showed you there, because we're talking about externalities here. We saw that the total surplus going to the consumers was smaller, and the surplus going to the producers is smaller, and the surplus going to government is bigger. And if the government just imposed that tax simply to raise money, we'd say it's decreased the output from 90 to 95, and it's pushed the price up from 20 to 21. So that's what's led to that dead weight loss. But if the government is doing it because it's trying to counteract a negative externality, we look upon this differently. If the government lets the externality go and doesn't do anything about it, we'd say that triangle actually is the dead weight loss. The fact that 100 goods are being produced, that really indicates that there are too many goods being produced, because this good has negative impacts on society. So if the government is just introducing the tax to raise revenue, we'd say that taxation creates a dead weight loss. On the other hand, if the government imposes that tax to get rid of a negative externality, we would say that the government is also eliminating the dead weight loss due to the overproduction of this harmful product. So it's a bit of a nuanced view of government taxation. Essentially what we're saying is sometimes taxation can be used for the purpose of building in the negative externality into the market price itself. So I'm going to leave chapter 9 there, and I'm now going to move to chapter 10. So it might just take me a little while to bring up the new slide. Let me see how we go here. I've got to bring up my new presentation. Just forgive me here for a minute. It'll just take me a minute to do this. All right, I think we're ready to go with chapter 10 now. So this is our last chapter in our course. This has got to do with public goods. Public goods have quite a specific definition, and we'll get into the definition in a minute. Many people think that if we say public transport, public school, public anything, that it's automatically a public good. Very often it is a public good, but sometimes public goods don't completely fit the definition of a public good. So I'm going to get into the definition first, and then we'll work out, or we'll see how we can build some calculations into the way government finances public goods. So let's start our presentation of chapter 10. So you should be able to see the slide now. So our last 3 chapters have all started with a slide that looks like this. All started with a slide that outlines the difference between perfect and imperfect competition. Let's just remind ourselves of the conditions for perfect competition. There are price takers, but of course, sometimes we're not price takers, right? So that was chapter 7. Sometimes goods are not homogeneous. Chapter 8, where we saw oligopoly firms competing against one another. Sometimes there are externalities. Chapter 10, sometimes there's not perfect information or no free entry and exit. Again, that's mostly chapter 7. That's mostly chapter 7. But today we're dealing with this characteristic here. That's where goods are rival and, the goods in perfect competition are rival and excludable, but we're looking at chapter 9 where these things do not apply. So we've, over our last 4 chapters, 7, 8, 9, and 10, what have we really been learning here? What we've been learning is this, that we make certain assumptions about perfect competition, but then in the last 4 chapters of our course, we realize that the world is actually imperfect in many situations, and that's what chapters 7, 8, 9, and 10 are showing us, that some of these things in perfect competition do not apply. They do not apply. So we're looking at goods being rival and excludable, and these are called public goods. In order for a good to be a public good, it needs to have two characteristics. It needs to be excludable, and it needs to be rival. We need to then understand what these terms mean, and we're going to define those in a minute. But when we think about public goods, we're thinking about goods that many people use at the same time. So education, schools, many people go to school, share in the education facilities at the same time, or at the university. The health system, many people are using the medical system to go and see the doctor. It could be the national health. It could be Medicare. The national defence is there to support the whole community. It's there to support all the citizens at the same time. And the same with the legal system, the policing system, the courts and so forth. That is there for all citizens to access simultaneously. So this is what we mean when we say non-rival. Non-rival. It's where one individual's consumption of a good does not impede another individual consuming it as well. And it also means that the cost of another person using the public good is zero. Is zero. So let me just talk to you about this idea of the public good being non-excludable. If I'm on a big wide highway and I'm driving down the highway, you can also be driving down the highway. So can thousands of other people be driving down the highway. So the fact that I am on the highway doesn't stop you using the highway. We can all use the highway together. If I go to the hospital to get care, that doesn't stop you going to the hospital to get care, because the hospital, in theory, is able to cope with large numbers of people. If I'm watching a television broadcast, the fact that I'm watching the television broadcast doesn't mean that that you can't watch the television broadcast, because the broadcast is essentially infinite, and so many people can use it at the same time. So that's what we mean when we say non-rival. We're not competing for the product. However, if I'm walk into if I'm sitting on a bus, for example, and all the seats on the bus are full, and then you and I get onto the bus and there's one seat left, then they are rival. Or if I'm driving, a better example, I suppose, is if I'm driving my car, right? I have the car, I own the car, and therefore you don't own the car. So a rival product is where one person is using the product, someone else can't use the product. A house, where you live, is a rival good. You're living there, so someone else is not living there, and so there's competition for that good. When we think about the roads, though, we do think of them as being non-rival. There's a big wide road, there's many lanes on the road, there's lots of traffic on the road, we can all use it at the same time. Yes, that's non-rival. But of course, we know ultimately if there's too much traffic on the road, it does become rival because we're now competing for spots on the road. Traffic slows down. So when we think about public goods, they are non-rival, but they're not infinite. And so many public goods, therefore, we say are not pure public goods. We have this concept of pure and impure public goods. But we still think about a public good as one which many people can use at the same time. I'll give you one other example, the defence forces. If our country is involved in a dispute with another country, our army goes to war to defend our country. The fact that they're defending me does not mean that they're defending you less. We're all sharing in the defence that the Defence Force provides. So that's what non-rival means. There's a big infrastructure, and it's all shared by lots of people. And the second part of the definition in front of you and on the previous slide was that the marginal cost of an extra person is zero. Now, this is also not always strictly true. But if we think about a big telephone network, when I make a phone call, I'm using the facilities of the telephone network. If you also make a phone call, it doesn't cost the network any more to provide that call to you because the big infrastructure has been built. It's there for everyone to use. If more people jump on and use the network, it usually is not an additional marginal cost for the network to operate because the network is there. It's designed to operate for millions of people to use it at the same time. So that's what we mean when we say non-rival. I'm going to switch back to the slides. Well, before I switch back to the slides, I will talk to you about non-excludable. We'll talk to you about non-excludable. Excludable means you can be prevented from using the product. If I want to get in my car and drive down the street this morning, I can do that, and no one will stop me doing it. On the other hand, if I want to buy breakfast this morning in a cafe and I don't have the money to pay for it, they will stop me using the product. So when we talk about excluding people, we most often mean excluding people on the basis of them not being able to pay or not paying for the product. So there are many products, most private goods are excludable. You want groceries, you have to pay for them. If you haven't got the money to pay for them, you're excluded from having them. You want to buy a house? Well, if you've got the money, you're included, but if you haven't got the money, you're excluded. So excludability means that you can be stopped using these goods if you don't pay. However, there are many goods that we do use whether we pay or not. So a perfect example of this would be street lights. You may not have a job, you may pay no tax, but if you go out at night, the street light will still be operating for you. You've made no contribution to that street light, you've paid nothing for it, but it's still available to you because no one can really stop you using it, even though you've not contributed to the cost of it. Going to a beach in Sydney, the beach will normally be clean. You have access to a clean beach, but if you're not from Sydney or you don't pay any local taxes, there's nothing to stop you using the beach. A beach becomes excludable if we build a fence around the beach and then we charge people to enter the beach. In Australia, we don't do that. But in some other countries, of course, they do. So an excludable product is one where you can be stopped from using the product if you are not paying for it. So that's an excludable product. We say that pure public goods are non-excludable. In other words, they are available to everyone, whether they've paid for them, whether they've contributed to the cost of them or not. So these are our two characteristics of public goods. They have both those characteristics. They are non-rival and they're non-excludable. You can't be stopped from using them. So non-excludable, no one can be excluded from using the good, from consuming the good, even if they haven't paid for those goods. Next, as I said to you before, is anything really ultimately non-rival? Pure public goods represent goods that are perfectly non-rivalrous and non-excludable. But most public goods are not pure public goods, because we know that although everyone has the right to use a hospital, go to the hospital, get seen in the emergency room, if the emergency room becomes very crowded, then it will be rival. You're going to have to wait for a while to get seen. So many of our goods that are provided by government are actually impure public goods because they're non-rivalrous or non-excludable, but only up to a point. Only up to a point, because that these goods are not really infinitely available. So excludable goods, goods that are excludable but non-rivalrous. Let's think about some of these. Pay TV. Why are they excludable? Because of this word, pay. If you don't pay, you don't get access to the product. But your ability to enjoy the product is not affected by someone else watching it. So many people can watch the broadcast at the same time. Any other products? Buses, airplanes? Well, these are excludable because if you don't pay the fare, you can't get on the plane. Are they infinitely non-rivalrous? Well, no, because we know that there's only so many seats on the bus and there's only so many seats on the plane. So we'd say that these goods are public. They're not public goods for two reasons. One, there is a level of rivalrous about them, and also they are excludable. What about goods that are not excludable but are rivalrous? So a road system, even though there is no toll, if there's lots of traffic, then there will be rivalry on the product. Public schools, public hospitals, they're non-excludable because in Australia we have Medicare, which entitles you to go to the hospital for free, or public schools. But of course, they may be rivalrous because there's only so many places at the school, only so many places in the hospital. So these goods, again, are going to be impure public goods. Very few goods are completely non-rivalrous and non-excludable. So most public goods are not completely pure public goods. Most of them are impure public goods. If we want to think about a pure public good, think about a product like Google. Now, is it excludable? In other words, do you have to pay to use it? Can you use it if you don't pay anything for it? And the answer is it's a freely available product, and anyone can access Google. So we say it's not excludable because people aren't excluded if they don't pay. No one pays to use Google. On the other hand, is it rivalrous? If I'm using Google, does that make your ability to use Google's search engine any weaker? Well, no, it doesn't. So Google is not a bad example of a pure public good, even though it's a private company. We normally associate governments with public goods, but it's a private company. But what it's providing it fits the example of a pure public good. We might ask, well, how can Google ever make money if people aren't paying? Well, we know how they make money. They make money through advertising. But Google might fit the description of a pure public good. All right, now, so that's where we've got to in our in our conceptualizing of public goods. We're now going to move into a sort of a specific example. So we're going to imagine that our society has only two people in it, the society we're going to look at today, Anna and Zoe, and they want to share they want to share the services of a cleaner. They want to share the services of a cleaner. Now, why are we using Anna and Zoe? Because we've reduced our society down to two people. But in any real world example, we'd assume that there's Anna and Zoe and millions of other people like them. But we're trying to build a model here where we're talking about a number of people in the society, all of whom want a certain product. In the real world, what might all our individual citizens want? They may want a good public transport system. They might want a good road system. They might want clean parks or clean beaches. They might want a library. All sorts of, they might want a good road system. So there's many things, many shared bits of infrastructure that our society might want. And all the individuals in the society, we assume, want access to either the good or the service. So these two people in this society, they want cleaning. And the question is, what we're looking at here is what is the efficient level of cleaning that Anna and Zoe should have in their apartment. Because all public goods need to be provided, but we need to provide them in the appropriate amount. We don't want too much of the public good because it's too costly. We don't want too little of the public good because people are not getting their needs met. So the way that we conceptualize our society here is we say that there's going to be an aggregate or a total demand for the public good. And that total demand is the society's demand for the good. It's shown by the black line. And how do we get to this black line? What we look at is we look at the marginal social benefit, right? Marginal social benefit of, and the way we get to the marginal social benefit is by adding up all the individual benefit. All the individual benefit to all the individuals in society. So in this society, remember, we have two people. We have Zoe, she's one person, and we have Anna, she's the second person in our society. And we look at the price of providing our public good. Our price of providing our public good is $30 per unit. In other words, in their apartment, it costs $30 an hour to get a cleaner to come and clean the apartment. So what would be an efficient number of hours of cleaning in the apartment? So what we would do here is to say at any given level, I'll clean this lines up, at any given level, these two citizens have two different demand curves. So Anna's demand curve and Zoe's demand curve. Let's think about unit number 1. How much would Zoe be prepared to pay for 1 hour of cleaning? We can see what Zoe's willing to pay. That's the benefit that she gives to the product. And what is Anna willing to pay for 1 unit? Anna and Zoe are willing to pay 2 different amounts. And so if we add them together, I can simply add Zoe's to Anna's, and now I have the aggregate or the social benefit. So the social benefit is the sum of all the individual benefits. If we move over to the right a little bit, what is Anna willing to pay for 5 units? Zoe willing to pay for 5 units. What's Anna willing to pay for 5 units? Anna's willing to pay a much higher price than Zoe. Zoe's in green. So we simply add the green to the black, and again, we arrive at the totals. So the line at the black line is the sum of Anna and Zoe's individual demand curve for the public good. So the total marginal benefit, the marginal social benefit, is the vertical sum of the individual marginal benefits. So we assume that each individual in society has a need for the product. We assume that each individual has a need for the product, and then we just add Anna, Zoe, and all the other individuals in society, and we get a demand curve for the society as a whole. When we are thinking about calculating the society's need, this is a very hard thing to do in practice because the government doesn't know how much each individual wants in terms of its hospital services or its road services or the various shared facilities that we use. But so usually the way that government gauges this is by surveying the community or by seeing the lobbying that comes from the citizens to the politicians from the citizens who are demanding the public goods. So this is not a precise science. Governments are always guessing at the level that of social product that we need. I'll shift back to the slides. So let's just think about Anna and Zoe separately for a minute. When we think about the aggregate demand, collectively, no one is willing to pay more than $75 for the product. Even collectively, we're not willing to pay that. And no one is willing to pay more than 10 units. So somewhere we're going to have to arrive. How many units of the good will we produce? Somewhere between 0 and 10. And if we look at the price of the product, this is the marginal cost of the product, right? $30 is the marginal cost of the product. And our demand curve intersects with that marginal cost curve at 6 units. So what we're saying here is that the efficient level of output when we add Anna and Zoe together, their collective demand curve, which we've shown by the social marginal benefit line, intersects at 6. So 6 is the efficient number. This society should have 6 units of cleaning. Will they have 6 units of cleaning? Well, if we're thinking about this efficiency model, we say the efficient number of hours and Zoe together, we simply add the marginal individual benefits, that's Anna and Zoe together. From them, we get the marginal social benefits. So we go from the individual benefits, we add them all up, we go to the social benefit, and then we equate that to the marginal cost, and that's the price that we will be willing to pay for the cleaning. So it's efficient to produce at 6 hours. But what we're going to see now when we develop this model a bit more is that although 6 is the efficient outcome, we're in the free market, we are not going to get an efficient outcome. In other words, we're going to get an example of market failure. Let's have a look and see why this will be the case. When we think about the Samuelson condition, the Samuelson condition states that the efficient quantity of public goods is found by setting the sum of the individual marginal benefits equal to the marginal cost. And we've already seen that on the diagram, and that is at quantity 6. However, the free market is likely to fail because when we're thinking about public goods often fail to provide the efficient number. Why do they fail to provide it? They fail to provide it because of what we saw originally when we defined the product, the issue of non-excludability. So non-excludability often results in free riding. Let's have a look at how free riding is going to play out with Anna and Zoe in their house. Think about the price of this product. The price of this product is $30. And then look at Zoe's demand curve. What is the maximum amount that Zoe will pay for cleaning? $25. In other words, Zoe is never going to pay $30 for a cleaner. So if it comes down to people paying for this product, Zoe's paying for no cleaning. She doesn't value the cleaning at any more than $30. Now, what about Anna? Anna, of course, if we take Anna by herself, Anna at $30, she values, I'm putting a dot here, she values cleaning at $30. She says, well, at $30, I would be prepared to buy 4 hours of cleaning. Anna and Zoe are sharing this house. They're sharing the public good. It's a public good because, they're sharing the good because although Zoe is not contributing to the cleaner, Zoe is not paying anything for the cleaner. Anna buys 4 hours of cleaning. Anna gets the cleaner in for 4 hours, but Zoe still gets the benefit of a clean house. So we would say that under this situation, Zoe is free riding on Anna. Anna's probably quite angry about this, or possibly angry. They're two flatmates. The cleaner comes in for 4 hours. Anna's paying for all of it, and it's still not clean enough, really, because the efficient level of cleaning is 6. It's not clean enough anyway, and all of the expense is being paid by Anna. And we say Zoe is a free rider because she's paying nothing, but she's still getting the benefit of a clean house. We assume the bathroom, the kitchen, and so forth that are shared by the two of them are cleaner as a result of the cleaner coming in. So she is free riding. And so with public goods, free riding becomes a real trap, because imagine that you have a need for a public good like lighting, street lighting. If we ask everyone in the street who needs street lighting, everyone will say, yes, I need street lighting. So we can see that there's a collective need for street lighting. And then the government says, well, we're going to put this street lighting in, and the street lighting goes in. They send you a tax bill. What about the people who don't pay their tax? What happens to them? Does the street lighting go out when they walk down the street? The answer is it doesn't go out when they walk down the street. So those people are free riding. Even though they're not contributing any taxation, they will be still getting the benefit of the street lighting. So they are free riding on the other citizens who are paying tax. And if the government sends out another bill in the next year, will anyone pay the tax? Well, the answer is no one will pay the tax, because they understand, everyone now understands, that they can get the product anyway. So this explains why private firms generally do not provide public goods, because unless they can force people to pay, and unless they find a way of stopping non-payers from using the product, they can't force anyone to pay the bill. And therefore, they have no way of earning revenue, because people will simply mostly elect to not pay. So the issue of free riding is a real, what it means is that the private market generally will not provide these goods. And if the private market doesn't provide these goods, then it often comes down to governments to provide these goods. So we're going to have a look at the way that might happen next. So I'm going back to the slides. So free riding denotes the action of enjoying a good without paying for it. It's caused by the non-excludable nature of public goods, and it results in under-provision of public goods. Let's have a look at this product here. The cleaning in Zoe and Anna's house. How much will be provided under the market system? Well, 4 units will be provided. What's the efficient level? 6 units. So this good is being underprovided by 2 units. Why do we say there's a dead weight loss? Because the social marginal benefit curve, it shows the marginal benefit for society. The horizontal line shows the marginal cost of providing it. So the benefit is greater than the cost, but the good is still not being provided. So that then contradicts our cost-benefit principle. If the benefit is greater than cost, normally the good should exist. But in this case, the benefit is greater than the cost and the good does not exist because of the free riding issue. What would really make sense in this situation is for Zoe not to be a free rider. Why shouldn't Anna and Zoe agree on the 6 hours? They know that 6 hours is the efficient level. And then why would Anna not pay $20 an hour and Zoe pay $10 an hour, and that would get to the $30 an hour? So these are called Lindahl prices, where each consumer pays a contribution to the public good equal to the level of value that they place on that good. So let's just define Lindahl prices. Lindahl prices imply that each individual pays for the provision of the goods according to their public benefit. If this was the case, think about what would happen here. At the efficient level of output, 6. At 6, Zoe pays $10 and Anna pays $20. And so we've got the 2 of these two, then they contribute together, and the 10 from Zoe plus the 20 from Anna equal the $30. That's designed to the $30 that will then cover the cost of these goods, and now 6 goods will be provided. So this is the concept of the Lindahl price, that although the good is being shared by lots of people, not everyone is paying the same amount. Of course, the problem of this is, does this actually work in reality? Does this actually work in reality? There are a number of problems with the Lindahl price. We know that under the concept of the Lindahl price, everyone's paying a different amount, and each person's paying an amount equal to their marginal benefit, the value that they place on the good. But how are we ever going to know what that is? In reality, that's impossible to find out because people essentially will lie about the marginal benefit. If I want to pay less contribution to the public good, all I would say is, oh, well, I don't value that good very much, therefore I'm not going to pay very much for it. And everyone will be tempted to do that. So in reality, the concept of the Lindahl price is a little bit impractical, although we can kind of get to it in a different way. Because we might say, why isn't Zoe prepared to pay as much for the good as Anna? Maybe she's not prepared to pay as much as Anna because she doesn't have as much money, because she doesn't earn as much income. So maybe we can move in the direction of Lindale prices by getting people to pay different levels of tax based on their different incomes. We know that that doesn't completely reflect the value that they place on the good, but we could imply a bit that people with more income do have more ability to pay. So we'll go back to our slides, and I'm going to now finish this little analysis, this model, with some equations, and you can assume that you're going to get something like this in the exam. A couple of examples, questions like this. So we're back to our slides. So we're thinking about our Lindale prices. We know that it would make sense, perhaps, to get these people to pay different amounts. We can work out what their Lindale prices are from the equations of their individual demand curves. So let's think about Anna's demand curve for a moment. Let's think about Anna's. Anna's, what is the maximum Anna willing to pay? I'm showing this on the top right-hand side. The maximum Anna is willing to pay is $50. I've circled that on the vertical axis. What's the maximum that Zoe is willing to pay? $25. I've circled that, put a dot on the vertical axis. And then what's 50? What's 5Q? P equals 50 minus 5Q. So that would mean that the maximum that Anna will ever consume is 10. So I'm putting that on the horizontal axis, and Zoe's equation is P equals 25 minus 2.5Q. So when the price was 0, Zoe would consume 10 units. So we've got the two individual demand curves, and we've got two equations. And how do we get from these two individual demand curves to the society's demand curve? We just add them up. 25 plus 50 is 75, and 5Q plus 0.5Q is 7.5Q. So we have an equation for the society now. We've simply added them up. We've added them up, and we've come to society's equation. And then what do we do next? We then substitute the price into this equation. We know that the price is 30. We're drawing our horizontal line across to show our price line. We're drawing a black line to show society's curve. And then simply by substituting the 30 into the equation, we've now moved the 30 and changed the sign. We get 45 equals 5Q. The efficient level of output is 6. So we've calculated our efficient level of output from society's demand curve by substituting in the price. So that's the first step. So now we can, if we're given the equation for 2 individuals or 3 individuals, we could simply add them up, then substitute the price in, and we arrive at the efficient level of output. Then we can move from here to the Lindale prices. Anna's demand curve, we know that this is Anna's demand curve, and we can calculate from Anna's demand curve by substituting in the price. We substitute in the price. We know now what Anna is willing to pay, and we know that Zoe is not willing to pay anything. And so this is where we get to in the free market. We get an output of 4 in the free market, we get a dead weight loss. We can calculate the level of the dead weight loss. And we can see that in the free market, there is an under provision because Zoe is free riding. She's not contributing anything, and Anna is contributing the entire cost. If we're thinking about Lindale prices, if the optimum level of output is 6, then what do we do? We substitute that 6 into the equation for Anna and Zoe. We substitute that into the equation for Anna and Zoe, and we arrive at their Lindale prices. So we get their equations. We simply substitute the socially efficient output number 6. We know it was at 6, so we simply substitute that number in. Now we have their Lindale prices. And under this system, an efficient way to do this then would be for users to pay different amounts. And of course, how would we get this happening in the real world? In the real world, well, we have maybe the tax system. The tax system charges, more on high income earners. It's not precisely the Lindale price system, but it is a system which extracts different amounts from different people to contribute towards public goods. And the theory of the general theory of tax is that people on higher incomes probably will value the products more anyway, or they'll have a higher reservation price at least, and they then contribute more to public goods. And we know that in just about every country that is what happens. All right, so public goods. Are public goods an externality? Do they provide an externality? They do provide an externality because even though not everyone contributes to the public good, if someone is contributing to the price of the public good and providing that public good, other citizens in society are also benefiting from the fact that that public good exists. So it creates an externality for those who are not involved in the original transaction of purchasing that public good. So when we think about governments, each individual can benefit from someone else's public good provision. And of course, that does create the issue of free riding. And of course, non-excludability means that everyone can enjoy the good. So this is why governments do intervene. Governments intervene because firms will not provide an efficient amount of public goods. And firms will only provide the good if they can make a profit. If there's not a way of stopping non-payers from using the good, firms won't provide the good. And that's why we use the taxation system often, not always, but we use the taxation system to provide public goods because the free market fails to provide them because of the free riding issue. So under this situation, the government, right? The government hires a cleaner for 6 hours, and then Anna and Zoe pay different amounts of tax. This is not perfect. It's not perfect, but it's as close as we can practically come. So when governments are providing goods, when governments are providing public goods, they're thinking about two principles, right? Two essential principles in providing goods. We know we need hospitals, we need schools, we need roads, we need clean parks, we need clean beaches. So when the government is trying to allocate costs here, they may do this on two principles. They may do a combination of these, or they may choose one or the other. So the first one might be the ability to pay. I've already spoken about the ability to pay on a previous slide, where I said to you that the government may impose more tax on high income earners. So the government might say, well, high income earners have a higher ability to pay. On the other hand, for some public goods in Australia, this is the principle that applies. For other public goods in Australia, we have a different system. We have a pay-as-you-go system. For example, we know that roads, they're not exactly a public good because they can become crowded, and that introduces some rivalry. And also, if we have road tolls, which we have in Sydney, on certain motorways in Sydney, you pay to use the road. Under this system, the infrastructure is being provided, but there is an element of excludability here, because if you can't pay the toll, you're not allowed to drive on the road. So when we're thinking of providing infrastructure, when government is providing infrastructure like the road system or sometimes it uses a pay-as-you-go system. In other words, the user pays to use the product. And under those circumstances, we'd say it's not really a public good, but it is a way of providing infrastructure. For other types of shared infrastructure like schools, public schools, we don't charge for entry to public schools in the same way as we charge for entry to the motorway. We collect income tax, and that's more funded by an ability to pay. So when we're thinking about public goods, first thing to remember is there are not many pure public goods, really. There are many types of shared infrastructure that society needs. Often it's not practical for firms to provide these goods because of the free riding problem. It does fall to government, and then governments come up with different formulas for providing these goods. So I'm going to leave chapter 10 there. I think we've gone far enough in our lecture that I don't think we can, in reality, do much revision. I may record on using PowerPoint presentation a little revision exercise at some point and put it on the Moodle site. So thanks for your attention today. Make sure that you get your assessments in on time, that you're set up for your exam on Saturday, and good luck with the rest of the week. We have a very high success rate in the course. The average marks are usually pretty good, and you do also have the ability to push your chances up a little bit by completing the My Experience survey. So thanks for your attention today, and I might see you in another course. Thank you.